Hi, this is Lamar, and you're listening to Getting to Third Space with Lamar and Tom. A third space is a term that refers to a safe space for people to come together for respectful dialogue in a spirit of listening, sharing, and learning. In this podcast, we explore what it means to have third space conversations, and we try to model them. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please be sure to subscribe, share it, and of course, like it. The more people join us, the quicker we get to third space as a society. Now let's get to third space today.
Hey, Lamar, how's it going today?
Tom, it's going great. It's hot, but it's going great.
Hot. Yeah, well, in case this podcast runs in the fall, which is a possibility, it is the middle of July, almost the middle of July here today that we're recording, and we're in the middle of, you're still in the heat wave in
yes,
Kansas.
We are. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And we're in the middle of the World Cup. We don't know who has won it yet, but by the time this drops, we may know.
Someone will have, yeah.
Well, yeah, we know who won't win.
Yes, our beloved team just didn't make it. But hey, that's the way it works in tournaments, right?
You know, games are games.
Games are games. That's right.
You're going to win. You're going to lose. You know, it just happens. So has your summer been eventful so far? It's been hot. It's been otherwise pretty uneventful.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a pretty calm and quiet. I mean, yeah, you know, sometimes we just need to do a show that we talk about what old guys do in retirement. and the fact of the matter is, I've been really busy.
Yeah.
I haven't had time to worry about what I'm missing or anything else. So
I am beginning to reject the word retirement because I think it brings a many different perspectives of what that is. And I don't think it's a well-defined term. I just now tell people I just don't work for anybody. Myself.
I don't work. Of course, you know, there was a time when people did not live to be our age.
I know. Well, that's true. I know.
Yeah. And so I guess in another era, we'd be dead. So,
well, with that, we have a guest today.
We do. Oh, I tell you, we have been so fortunate to connect with the Behumankind folks over in the United Kingdom. They're the ones that inspired us to really begin to ask our questions about kindness and to dedicate our Thanksgiving show, which, by the way, is coming up, to stories of kindness that people have experienced.
We think, and we might ask you to share.
That's right. I mean, we'll come back and we'll feature some of these that we've heard during this year, but we'd really, really like to feature the stories of people that are listening or watching us. And so there is a link in our show notes. You can take a very quick look at a short survey that asks you just to tell us a couple quick stories about an act of kindness you've received and one that you have done that you hope has made a difference for somebody. So please, we've got some stories on there that we're going to share, but we'd love to get more.
And Tom, today we have a really interesting story in this interview. Erica Marks,
yes,
in the UK, is going to be joining us very shortly here. She's sitting in the green room, right?
She is sitting in the green room, and I hope she's enjoying the green room. So,
and we'll find out if she likes the gift basket.
Yeah. So, shall we open the door? Let her in?
Let's open it up.
All right, here we go. All right. Erica Marks is in from the green room. Hey,
welcome,
Erica. It is great to see you.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Lamar. Lovely to be here. How are you both today?
Doing great.
I'm doing great. So, Lamar?
Yes, sir.
Did you send the gift basket to
Erica?
Did. I did. I hope so, because, you know, you have kind of thrown that onto me recently and forgot to tell me.
Love a little bit.
Actually, yeah. So.
But no, I sent it well in advance, and knowing that the World Cup is in play, I even made sure I had a couple of extra days ahead to get through all of the transportation challenges. So I'm curious to see, Erica, how did you enjoy our gift basket?
Well, you must really know me, because dark chocolate upon dark chocolate is always acceptable. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Did you go shopping at Aldi and get their dark chocolate? Is that
I did not, but I got to tell you, I've been living in a household with someone that I cared deeply about for many years. I've learned this thing about chocolate. I don't understand it, but I'm all in. So I'm glad you love it.
It's one of your 5 a day, so it gets eaten a lot.
5 a day?
Okay.
I actually have 1 a day myself, but and I recently have moved over to dark chocolate. That's because I also live with one of those people that is dark chocolate all the time. So
Yeah.
my
I mean, we're talking 90% dark chocolate. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. See, I knew what I was doing.
I'm certainly 80%, but I will go higher if pushed.
Yeah. Now, the recommendation is you never feed like a dog this kind of level of chocolate, right? It's supposed to hurt them.
Yeah.
My dog now has been through 2 full bars of those things and survived.
Well,
not without some effects, but has survived.
Not without some effects and a little help cleaning up from Service Master, right?
Service Master, that's right. So we have learned to keep them in the cupboard. Yes.
Yeah. Well, pretty soon Jake's going to figure out how to pick the lock to that cupboard, and you're going to be in trouble.
And Jake is my dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Jake is the dog. So, well, Erica, we are really, really glad to have you here, and it's been a while since we've had somebody on from the UK. We've had Ed on in the past. Ed, until he got really busy in his technology world, was kind of our tech expert, and we've had Jules Casey on from the Behumankind movement, which that's how I got to know you, was through Jules and Behumankind. So,
and I think Ed's everybody's tech expert, to be honest.
I think that's probably true. And I understand he's working in the world of AI now, which does give me a little pause, but I trust Ed. Good. We want you to tell us and our listeners, viewers, a little bit about what you would really like us to know about you before we get too far into this conversation.
And I thought it was an interesting question. And I've just come out of an 18-month leadership course here in the UK. And we had a graduation ceremony on Sunday. And the leaders of the course came up with 3 words to describe each of us who'd gone through the course.
Really?
And so I thought I would bring those 3 words to this podcast. Okay. And the 3 words they gave me were heartfelt, creator, and problem solver. And I thought that was good because it did kind of sum up much of what I'm about. So I do bring my whole heart to everything I do in my life and in my work. I'm quite an open person, quite easy to read, quite transparent, very straightforward. In terms of creator, I've always been the kind of the busy bee. Always loved to, as a child, I'd go out in the garden and create in the garden. I would be busy with my music, with singing, with playing instruments, with writing songs. I would be busy sewing clothes for my dolls. I would do art, performance art and drama. So the creator is very much part of my being, I think. And I tend in a work scenario to look for the creative solutions first. I will be the one that you can see ideas sparking and thinking a bit outside the box. And then problem solver is almost like the opposite of that, but it is also part of what I do. And it's to zoom in really to the details and to think, okay, well, how can we do it? So it's great to talk the talk, but unless we're walking the walk, it doesn't mean anything. So I thought that was a fairly good analysis of who I am.
Yeah. So Erica, some of the things you mentioned, I'm curious about. You talked about performance art. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was offered a place at university at London University and Central School of Speech and Drama to do French and drama when I was 18. And I was all set to do that. because that was the course I wanted to do. And it was the only course in the country I wanted to go to. And then, and I'd always been involved with school plays and, I enjoyed it and tended to get given good parts, and it was fun. And I thought, okay, let's do it. It's fun. And then at the last minute, I changed and did my whole course at London University and did French and German instead. I still did some drama at uni, but I just felt last minute that perhaps I needed something a bit more academic than performance arts.
Do you have any regrets about that?
Well, yeah, listen, I think you can have regrets, but you can't. I mean, I made the decision as an 18-year-old. So, the 18-year-old brain makes very snap decisions.
Yeah.
And I have no regrets about my course because I met some fantastic people on my course, and from all over the world, we're still friends today. So would I have ended up on stage and screen otherwise? Maybe. But then with the way my life went, I'm not sure that would have been a sustainable option for me. So I can't have any regrets.
Yeah. Well, good. That's the same thing caught my ear when you were introducing yourself. So I'm glad you followed up on that, Lamar.
Well, so I'm curious to know. So you went French and German, right? And where did that take you? You went through that line of study, and then where did that land you in life?
It landed me in business, and I chose French and German because, to be honest, they came very easily to me. I would be studying physics and not understand a word, which is quite interesting because it's a different language, but I literally wouldn't cope with it. French, I never really had to work hard at. I always loved. My father's mother was German, and I'm named after her. So it always felt there was something there in my bones. And I still speak both languages today. Whenever we travel, we still manage to use languages. And I went into post-university, I went into fashion buying, and actually was the one when we had suppliers from different parts of the world and I needed to use my languages, and I could step in and use those.
Yeah. But with English, French, and German, you've got a lot of the world covered there.
Yes, not Spanish, but
not Spanish, and not
Chinese.
I was going any Mandarin or Cantonese there by any chance?
No, okay. I'd love to. I love Italian, actually. I can speak a smattering of words and half a dozen words in Greek because we go to Cyprus every year.
Very nice. Well, so one of the things we learned about you in our Get Acquainted meeting, our meetup, was that your work today is quite interesting, and it seems quite different from where you started. Can you tell us about the work that you're doing particularly in the Jewish community and how that came about?
Yes, I currently work as a CEO of a small charity in the UK, supporting adults who come from the Haredi or strictly Orthodox Jewish communities and either want to leave the community and have some help with education or pastoral support or any other type of life support, or people who are staying in the community who've had limited secular studies and limited ability to work outside the community, and so they need some additional help. And it's been a very long road to get there. And I think
could I ask you a question about that before you kind of get to that process? One of the things, so you used a term that we figured out would translate Hasidic here in the U.S. is the more common term that we would know. And yesterday I was talking with a Jewish friend of mine, and I was telling him that we were going to be talking to you about this. And he was helping me understand a little bit about marriage in the ultra-conservative Jewish world, and that the woman really just has absolutely no rights. And it would seem like this would be an incredible challenge to help them when you don't even have a legal ground to stand on, an incredible challenge to help them deal with that situation. Do I understand that correctly?
I wouldn't say no rights. I think that it might be somewhat different in the US from
Okay.
how it is in the UK and even in Israel in these more closed communities, I would say. They are definitely patriarchal communities. And in terms of leading the prayers and doing things in the synagogue, it's a very male oriented environment. The woman is there and has absolute rights in the home and brings up the children and has a big say over what goes on in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a spectrum. So in some strictly Orthodox homes, you will find there's a really good split between husband and wife, and there's mutual support and respect. And in fact, quite often the men will study and the women go out to work and look after the children.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a patriarchal society, quite often, if you have a query over something, you will go to your community leader, go to your rabbi, or it might sometimes be a respected female leader who is the wife of the rabbi to ask the questions. So you wouldn't necessarily make decisions on your own. You would make decisions based on what somebody else advised you, and you would listen to that. Now, that's a very different way of life from what we're used to. We're used to a way of life in which we have more individual choice and control, but we have less community support. So the communities, these strictly Orthodox communities, are also very self-sustaining. It's a fantastic social life. You might often get generations living together. That can cause issues as well as not issues, but you won't have a lot of television or computer or smartphones involved. So there'll be lots more person to person contact. There are also higher birth rates. So it's not uncommon for families to have 7, 10, 12 children. And that brings with it challenges.
Sure.
It really does. In the
So,
modern
Eric,
world.
you were talking about the journey that got you into this kind of work and in this community. Can you give us a little bit more background on what brought you into working with these communities?
Yeah. I started off my working life with no intention of working in the charity sector or health, social care, or anything like that. I didn't know anything about that at all. And I got pregnant with our first child, and he was born in 1992, but suffered quite a large brain injury, but a huge lack of oxygen and subsequent brain injury at birth. And my husband and I, as brand new parents, were thrown into this world that we knew nothing about. And we're very reliant on, first of all, our local Jewish community offering us services and Jewish charities that we knew, and then meeting other parents in the same situation. And then just muddling through, I think, for the first few years. Less than 2 years later, we had a daughter. We've got three daughters, a son and 3 daughters. And it was the early years were a struggle because I wasn't able to go back to work. I had always thought, well, I'll have a baby. I'll be on maternity leave for a period of time, and then I will go back to work. And of course that couldn't happen because our son had such complex and multiple needs that it needed one of us, and it was going to be me, to stay at home and take care of those needs. And from that, I was probably at home for the next 10 to 15 years. So there's a 9-year gap between our oldest and our youngest.
Okay.
And although I worked from home, I was deliberately working based from home so that I could deal with the childcare of bringing up 4 children, one of whom had complex needs. And we had at one time 2 support workers living in our house, to do round the clock support.
Yeah.
So that was a logistical logistical challenge for us, particularly for me. And it meant that I couldn't go back to my old life, which was fashion buying.
Mhm.
And so by the time the children were old enough, I had been pulled into charity work by some of the charities that were supporting us. And they said, well, we want your voice to help us fundraise and explain from your point of view what it's like as a service user.
Mhm.
And from that, I was dragged into being a trustee of one or more charities. And from that, when I was ready to go back to work, I started looking at charity work and got into charity work within the community at leadership level. And then actually one of our closest friends whose son, they also had 4 children, and their son was my son's best friend. The boys were living at that time in different parts of the country, and we always wanted them to live together, and there was no home for them that was suitable. So my friend managed to find somebody to put the money up, and he and I designed and built a 12-bedroom care home for young adults with profound and multiple disabilities. And that care home is 10 years old now. And
Wow.
so it's been amazing. And from that led me into more work in disability, and then followed sexual abuse, where I headed up a charity, and then most recently into this charity that I'm working at now.
I am always fascinated by the path that people who are open to walk through the doors that are open for them. I'm always fascinated how they get to where they are. It's not necessarily directly connected to your studies and your prep. It has to do with your experience in life. And so I'm just fascinated by that. And you have just a beautiful story, I think.
And I think it's really interesting what you say, that if you're ready to and open to walking through the doors that are open for you. And I think that I felt, although I'd gained huge amounts of different experience staying at home and bringing up 4 children under really difficult circumstances,
Yeah.
I didn't feel that there were many doors open for me in the workplace yet. And so I felt that I had to walk through whichever doors were opened
Good
for
point.
me and just go for it. And even though I was in my early 40s by then, just go for it, learn as much as I could, and then just see where it took me. There wasn't really a plan.
Oh, that sounds so familiar. Actually, not really a plan. I mean, the idea, as Lamar said, that we maybe do formal training for something, but the likelihood that we actually end up doing that, this is not put in the college catalogs, of course, right? Where they say, okay, you're going to train to be this, that, or the other thing, but you're actually going to end up doing this. We don't really give that piece of information to new students very well. In the podcast, though, Erica, we often talk about taking winning off the table to help create third space for even the most difficult conversations. And as I'm thinking about your journey in your life, I can imagine you've had a lot of really challenging and interesting and difficult conversations, certainly around the whole issue of disabilities, and advocating for your son and advocating for others who have been in similar situations. Sexual abuse, that's a field that I've had some experience in as well. And actually sexual health, which is a very controversial field here in the US. I know there's a lot of difficult conversations that you have in that world as well. And particularly, again, as you're trying to create some protection for people that have been hurt. And now in taking on the issue of people who have embraced a religious life that has meaning for them, but now perhaps challenged to try to find another way to live because of how destructive it can be. When you're having the kinds of difficult conversations that you're having, and where winning may be really important to one side or the other, how do you do that in a way that keeps winning off the table?
I think it's a really difficult question to answer. And I think I've had to choose my battles. And I've had to be really clear in different scenarios what I'm trying to achieve and how I want to achieve it. So when my son was born and in the early years, I didn't feel that I could lose some battles because I felt that his life would be at risk if I lost those. That was about me learning to advocate effectively for his needs and also understanding very quickly the needs of the person sitting opposite me, saying, no, we can't deliver this service. And me trying to convince them that they could deliver the service and it wasn't going to cost them much money, but they just needed to think about it in a different way and how we could all work together as a team. So I think I understood without really yet understanding why. I think I understood very early on in my career as a parent before I became a professional that it was, and this is where Behumankind teachings have helped me understand the theory behind what I knew intrinsically, was that I had to understand the person in front of me. I had to really look at and hear what they were saying or what they weren't saying to me, and then try to find solutions where we would reach a win-win. And one of the modules that, that Jules was teaching us in Be Humankind was always to get to win-win. And I've always instinctively tried to do that in my career. And I've often inherited scenarios and inherited organizations where my predecessor has burnt bridges, sometimes nuked bridges. And I had to come back in and say, I'm a completely different person. Talk to me. Let me know who you are. Let me understand what your needs are. Let's look at where the common ground is, and we'll work on that first of all. And then you build trust between you. And then you can start to push those boundaries a little bit to say, okay, now you know who I am. Now you trust me. Can you hear a bit more what I'm trying to say? And people do. They're very open to that.
Erica, can you maybe give us an example of, you don't have to name names or put people on the spot, but can you give us an example of one of those kinds of situations where you were advocating and getting to a point of a win-win?
Yeah, so I think early on in my tenure in a sexual abuse charity, I think I was dealing with a few communal leaders who had felt either disrespected or misunderstood by what had gone on previously in our organization. And I had to go in and say, this is me, this is my background, this is who I've worked with in the past, this is how I've built trust in the past, this is what I've achieved in the past. Please talk to me as if I know nothing of what's gone on before and tell me how it affected you. And so I would hear their stories. I would validate their experiences and apologize on behalf of the organization for misunderstandings, for upset that was caused, and said, I really believe that we're both trying to achieve the same thing here. And then we started to have the conversations about how could we achieve that. And I was told by communal leaders, I need you to do this. I need you not to do this. And then I was able to say the same to them. So it's almost like taking it back to the very beginning, acknowledging that something has gone on that was suboptimal. Mm-hmm. Because I think if we don't do that, I think we're not being true to the experience and it doesn't breed trust. So I think just being really honest about things, but also I needed to show them that I was going to do what I said I was going to do or not do what they didn't want me to do. And I managed that through everything that I said and did in a public forum.
A couple of minutes ago, you referenced what you learned from Jules and Be Humankind. And I want to loop back to that in a second. But something you just said made me think this other question that we were hoping to get to. When we met with you in our meetup, you said something that really intrigued us. You made the point that being kind is not the same as being nice. Can you expand on that just a little bit and maybe give an example of why it is important to differentiate between those two? I think I get what you're saying, but I think it's such a good point. I'd like to see you kind of pull it apart a little bit here.
So I think what I meant by that was that it's sometimes in being kind, we forget that kindness to self is right up there. And we feel that we can be kind to others, but we don't often offer that same kindness to ourselves. So if, for example, on a personal level, and we've had this with friends who had children of the same age and just did not understand what we were going through as a family because their children didn't have health or disability issues. And so they found it very hard to relate to us. And it was a bit awkward. And so we had to make the decision to step back. But we stepped back with kindness. I still kept in touch with people, still did everything. We just didn't see them as often. And now that our children are grown up, we've got more in common because we don't have to be together with our disabled child right in the middle of it, which might be a bit awkward. And so some of those friendships go to and fro, but I in particular took the decision for us as a family and for my husband as well, that we were going to be kind and nice about it, but we were going to do what was right for us and our family as well. And sometimes that means stepping back from things and stepping back into them.
And so in that scenario, so you were being kind to yourself and you were being kind to them. To be nice, reading between the lines here, would be that you would just kind of stuff that down for yourself and you would continue to try to meet with them because it was the proper thing to do, right?
Correct. You'd go to events that were difficult to attend, especially events where there were parties or group events where you knew your child would find it difficult because he had sensory difficulties. And therefore, it would just be really stressful all round. So it would be nice to do that, but it wouldn't be kind to anybody involved.
Yeah. And certainly not to your son and not to yourselves. Right.
And that's on a personal level. And on a professional level, whether I've employed people in our own home or employed people through an organization, I've tried to be really clear and really kind and supportive to them. But I've said, look, these are the ground rules that we've got. I want to hear your ground rules as well. We've got to have a good match of values and a good match of work ethic. So I commit to you with kindness in that we're a learning environment. We're not a blame environment. So when something goes wrong, it goes wrong because we as a team did not know what we did not know, and we'll reflect on that. But the other side of that is that if we don't learn from that and we keep committing the same mistakes over and over again, you need to know that we will be having a different conversation, and that might lead elsewhere in that they don't remain in the organization or they don't remain working for us in our home. And that happened a few times as well. So I wasn't prepared to have the wrong type of person or the wrong fit of person, I think, because everybody's the right type of person, but it was certainly whether you're the right fit for us as a family or us as an organization. It needed to be a good match on both sides for it to work. And I think that's the difference between niceness and kindness. If you're nice, you often let things slide that you shouldn't. But you don't need to do that and be mean at the same time. There needs to be a balance. You need to appreciate the other person.
I think this is a really important dimension of third space engagements and conversations with people, is that I think sometimes people might interpret that when Lamar and I are talking about, getting to a third space, that it's like at all cost, we're gonna get to a third space, but it's not like that at all. It's kindness says that you're truthful, that you are respectful, but that you're not necessarily always going to be nice. I was recently in a conversation that we eventually got to third space, but I wasn't nice in that. I grin every time you say, well, if it doesn't go this way, we're going to have a different kind of conversation. Well, this was a different kind of conversation, which I never like to have with anybody, but I couldn't be nice in the situation because it was really a hurtful situation. and a damaging situation.
That means we need a bit of courage then.
Yes.
Right.
In
Yeah,
those.
absolutely.
We need to recognize that that's where the situation is going. And we do recognize it. We feel it in our bodies. But then if we go, well, hang on, am I actually going to say something? It's really difficult. And
Yep.
the person might react adversely. And I'm a bit frightened of that and how I will react to that adverse reaction. That's where courage comes in.
Right.
And we need tools for that.
And it seems that if we always have in our mind the end game of we're going to get to a third space, even if we don't start there, that helps us, to move forward in it. But yeah, I was really intrigued by that part of our conversation, looking back a couple weeks ago when we had that, and thank you for unpacking that a little bit more with us. I think it's helpful for people to understand that getting to third space is really a process, and you may not necessarily start out in a third space, but you can get to it, even in the more difficult conversations. So,
I was thinking about your current work and the challenges of communication. Working with people who are in a situation that they're wanting to leave. Then those that are in that community, that this community is so important and so valuable that there's this conversation it has to be a difficult conversation. How do you be an advocate without being an adversary?
Really interesting question. And it's one that I think I'm still in the middle of grappling with. I'm only 3 months in. So prior to taking on this role, I have worked with people from the Haredi Hasidic communities in 3 previous organizations. So I am known within pockets of each of the communities as being a trusted professional because I have delivered projects and had conversations and support that has been well received. So I think that historical part of my career is really helpful in this. I would say I'm very clear when we're meeting new members, and I've got a fantastic team that generally does that for me. I'm much more of a CEO and stepped back now, but I'm very clear that we as an organization have clear things that we can do for people and clear things that we can't do for people. And I think that's kind to say that as well, that, we're being very honest with people. And if we can't do something, I'm happy to deliver that news and explain to them why not. They may not like it. They may not understand it, but I will stand firm on that. I might not give up on the fact that we might be able to do it at some point in the future. And I will certainly think about that and work towards it. But as of right now, if I know that we can't deliver something, I will be very clear. And I think that's about setting the contract with the person you're working with right at the beginning. And also understanding and helping them to understand that they are coming from a very high control environment into a very low control environment. And they may have no idea what that means. And that's a work in progress. They may get that very quickly within a matter of weeks or months. It may take them years or decades to get that and really understand that. And to mourn and miss the high support that they've had. Because when your life is ordered and predictable from a child into adulthood, that can be quite comforting. It's also really difficult, and I have no idea how I would do it if I was coming from an environment where I would potentially lose my whole family, my whole community, and make myself additionally vulnerable by going into a new environment that I knew nothing about, that I had no access to. So we are very clear in the support we can offer, who can be there to support, what they can do, and how to access that support. But we also try and coach and mentor people into finding their own voice and being able to ask for what they want. And that takes time. And there's no predictor of how long that will take. Some people will find that they can use their voice and can ask for things, and they've thought about this enough already, and they come already with a very clear idea of what they want. And then it's just about us giving, hopefully, some light support to get them on their way. Others will need much more impact for a longer period.
We're beginning to bump up against our time limit here. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Behumankind, but it occurred to me that in our conversation, you've really illustrated in so many ways how you've taken the lessons from Behumankind and you have integrated those into your work, in part because some of them were already there, from your experience with your son. And so I think we probably ought to move into a couple other things as we begin to wind down here. We typically ask folks to tell us about an act of kindness that you've received that made a difference in your life. And so we would pose that to you now.
I'm quite blessed in having received many acts of kindness over the years. But I think it's always the very little things. And I'm very conscious that it's not necessarily what somebody does as a kind deed, but how that makes you feel. And I know way back, it was a friend of ours. We just had our son. He was in special care for 2 weeks. We were running to and from the hospital. So I'd literally just given birth, and honestly, neither of us knew which way was up. And both of our sets of parents were working. So we didn't have food at home ready for us. And actually, the one thing you needed was you just need food when you're a new parent. And one of our friends' wives turned up one evening with a spaghetti bolognese, and it was the first meal that was ever made for us. And it was completely nutritious, had everything in it that I could have needed as a new mum and that we both needed as new parents. She wasn't one of our closest friends, just somebody on the periphery who just turned up with something. And that really struck me as being so kind. And it made me feel it really nurtured and supported in the start of this really challenging journey that we were going on. So, yeah.
Great. It's a great, simple story.
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes people call it paying forward. Sometimes it's opportunities that we just don't even realize that we are part of. But can you maybe describe or share with us a story where maybe you have given kindness to someone that you believe or you're hoping made a difference for them?
I like to just do very small things that I know will make a big difference. One of the things that I always say is I always try to say yes. If somebody asks me for something, always the answer is yes. What's the question? And then kind of worry about, oh gosh, how am I going to do that? But it's always yes. So it will be things like making food for people when they need it, when they're ill or when they've had a bereavement. That's quite a Jewish thing anyway, that we tend to do. We rally around as a community. It means in times of stress in particular, you're kind of not thinking, you revert to having very basic needs. And so we need, as a family and friends surrounding that person or surrounding that family, we need to be able to just keep them going, so that they can grieve, so that they can recover from an illness. And just something like that is really important. Whenever I've got friends or colleagues who are raising money for charity, if they ask me, I always try and give something, even if I'm only able to give something small, because I want to support their efforts and make sure that they know I appreciate that they're doing something. They're trying to make a difference. So I'm always supportive in that. And I just think it's those small things, remembering people's birthdays, keeping in touch with friends, prioritizing friends and family, and making sure that we do get quality time together.
Well, we'll flip the tables. We do ask, or we do offer an opportunity for our guests to ask us a question. Anything that you have on your mind is saying, hey, Tom and Lamar, what about this? Or what do you think about this? Or whatever question you might have for us. We'd be happy to give it a go.
So in a time where we collectively are becoming polarized, we seem to be more fearful of talking to each other and hearing really different viewpoints. I heard recently, it's like almost as if we hear the opposite viewpoint, we're scared that it might corrupt our way of thinking. And we're so entrenched in our way of thinking, we don't want to hear anybody else's viewpoint. How do we break through these barriers? And I'm guessing, this is part of what we're doing here in this podcast to try and reach out. But I'm constantly interested in how I can hear a completely different viewpoint that might inform my thinking and move the dial for me so that I'm not in the original thinking that I was at the beginning of the conversation.
Tom, can I give it a go first while you're thinking?
Please do. Please
All
do.
right. So a couple of words come to my mind to take me down that path to answer that question. One, and you brought it up, Eric, and that is courage. For people to have courage to go beyond where they're comfortable and recognize that that's what it's going to take. But coupled with courage, I think has to be curiosity. If I'm not curious about understanding more, learning more, experiencing beyond myself, it's really hard to put courage into play and take that step. So those two things are really important, I think, for the individual who should maybe or wants to move beyond what their perspective is. I look at many people that I have interacted with. What I hear often is a perspective that is given to them with another message, which I think is a scary message, and that is, don't listen to anybody else. Don't explore beyond this, because what you're going to, in fact, I heard this in a meeting a year or so ago. If you go there, it's going to take you down the wrong path, And honestly, I have found very little times in my life where I've gone past those boundaries that it's been a wrong path. It's just been an interesting path, So I think that there's this built-in societal, I don't know if it's societal, but it's developed more and more where messages or things that we have learned have come with this warning not to think beyond this. So I think it takes courage and curiosity to move past that. Doesn't mean you're going to change. It just means that you expand your thinking and your worldview a bit. I don't know. That's kind of my first response. What do you think, Tom?
I think you said something, Eric, when you asked the question that you're open to changing your viewpoint and expanding your understanding of that. I don't think it's necessary for a person to change their viewpoints. But I do think it's necessary for them to change their understanding. There are people that I disagree with vehemently on some issues. But through communicating with them, talking with them, I understand them better.
Yeah.
And I understand they are not going to change their viewpoint either. But it doesn't prevent us from being in relationship. It doesn't prevent us from being in communication and talking with one another and seeking greater understanding. Does that mean that eventually, I mean, if the shift in viewpoint is that I understand them better, then that's perfectly fine. But if the shift in viewpoint is that all of a sudden, I'm agreeing with them on every point, then that's probably not going to happen, right? I mean, I am never going to go buy an apple, right? Lamar is never going to go buy an apple other than one you eat, right? I'm not going to ever buy an Apple product. Lamar is long past ever buying a Windows product, right? We are just not going to change each other's opinions on that. I know I'm not going to get Lamar on the golf course.
You might, but not to play golf, right?
But not to play golf, right? Maybe riding in the cart, and that's okay. But I understand more clearly his perspective on those things. And of course, there are much, much deeper issues right now that really divide people. And that is where it becomes really hard, especially where emotions run high, and where the disagreement can go beyond the policies to the personal, and that's really tough. That's very, very difficult. I think the one thing that I have found to be really useful is to invest in the relationship first, without worrying about the ideology. And so I get, because I work with a golf league, and it requires me to be present at a lot of golf events. I often get thrown into a cart with somebody I've never met. And so I'm not going to go straight to politics with that person or anything disagreeable. I'm going to spend a lot of time getting to know them. We're going to be together for somewhere 4 to 5 hours anyway. So, let's just talk, let's get acquainted, let's build a relationship. And then eventually I begin to understand who they are and where they're coming from. And it makes it easier then to have more substantive conversations, if you will. I don't know how we do much of this without relationship building. I think that's really got to happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, what a good question.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Yeah, that made us think.
Well, we have come to the end of our time, and Erica, this has been a wonderful conversation.
Yes,
and
it has.
Thank you so much for sharing with
Thank
us.
you, Bo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
we appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
and you. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been really lovely. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the World Cup.
Well, yes, we will. All right.
I
Take care.
hear the reports are coming back. The Americans across the country are being fabulous and so hospitable, and everyone's having a great time, a real carnival atmosphere. So well done, team.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a bright spot in our history in this moment. Yeah. Thank you.
You take care, Erica. Take care.
Bye
Bye-bye.
See you.
Tom, that was an awesome time together with Erica, and learning more about her, learning more about her perspective on kindness and niceness.
Yeah.
And, man, her story is an incredible story. So I was thrilled that we were able to hear it from her.
Yeah, I am too. And I want to give a shout out to Jules Casey for recommending that we reach out to Erica to talk with her on the podcast. When Jules suggested her, she said, if you want to talk with somebody who's done a really neat job of integrating the principles of Behumankind into their work, make sure you talk to Erica. And she did not disappoint. That was really, really interesting. Was there any particular thing that stood out to you that as we talked?
Yeah, several things. I mean, just the journey she and her husband have had with a son with a significant, physical limitation, and how they navigated that. Her current work with individuals who are looking to maybe leave a more, I don't know how you would describe it, but a Jewish community, a very conservative Jewish community that may not be conducive to their lifestyle, and working with sexual abuse. I mean, she has certainly come a long way from the fashion design world that she was in previously. I mean, what an incredible story. So I don't know if there's anything in particular other than to the journey. Well, many things in particular, but the journey she's been on has been amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we talked a little bit about it with her, that, how interesting it is that, at age 18, when we are ready to go to college, we think we're signing up for something that we're going to do for the rest of our lives. In her case, she thought it was going to be theater at first, and then it became French and German languages. And in reality, her life went an entirely different direction. And I would say that's largely true for both of us as well, and many other people we know.
Right.
We think we know what we're going to do at age 18 for the rest of our lives. No. My goodness.
But also how to implant or interject the whole be kind, but be firm, be an advocate and not an aggressor or a adversary. I mean, all of those kinds of roles that she talked about, that was a challenge, I think, to all of us.
Yeah, that part where we were talking about kindness versus niceness, I thought was really, really significant. I'm glad we did that. The fact that kindness does not mean wimpiness. It doesn't mean that you just roll over and let the person run over you if you're being kind. No, to be kind can sometimes to be tough, and to be courageous in that toughness, and say and do what needs to be done, but do it in a way that does not denigrate and tear somebody down. I think recently here we have had a very different view of kindness thrust upon us. That it's somehow weakness. That is there's something wrong with us if we're being kind to people. But she really nailed it, saying, it's really about strength and courage.
It is. And realizing that, we talk about taking winning off the table. And I think that's an important concept. There's also the win-win concept.
Yes.
Where winning is on the table for both involved, with those involved.
Yes.
And finding ways to define that.
Yes.
Might be something we explore a little further. So.
Yeah, it might be. I think that could be very, very good. I guess it's that time we need to wrap up, but it's good to see you as always, Lamar. We got basketball games on tonight as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Indiana Fever is on. So
we don't want to miss it.
Well, it won't be on until 10 o'clock tonight our time, so I think I got time to get there.
We need to talk a little bit sometime about what we see happening in the WNBA. I think that'd be an interesting conversation.
I think so too. Maybe we'll put that down for something coming up pretty soon.
Yeah,
so.
And maybe kindness might be the basis of that conversation too.
It might be.
All right.
Okay. All right. Take care, Lamar.
All right. You too, man.
All right. Bye.
Tom here. Thank you for listening to Getting to Third Space with Lamar and Tom. Remember to click on subscribe to get notices about new episodes, and be sure to like and share the podcast as well. Opinions and ideas expressed in this podcast are solely those of Lamar Roth and Tom Klaus, and we'd like to hear your opinions and ideas too. You can leave us a voice message on Spotify, or you can email us at the addresses found in the show notes. Also, in the show notes, you can find links to some of the things we talked about today, so you can check them out yourself. Until next time, keep moving forward toward third space.
This podcast was reviewed and approved by Jake and Ebby Dogs Incorporated.